road here. Man, these pothole patches. I think that at a certain point, it's just a pothole road rather than a paved road. So, good morning, everybody. This morning, I want to talk about hiring and firing. So, my biggest thing, I've probably fired, I stopped counting after about 60 firings. And, that it's never fun. You don't want to fire people, but sometimes it's just very clear that it's not going to work out for whatever reason for between you and the business and others in the business. And those are, several of the considerations that we make. I think a lot of times people get fired quicker than they should. And I think that a lot of the times it's because a lack of clarity between the employee and the employer. I think it's important that if you are hiring people, you need to remember that you are taking their livelihoods into your hands. A lot of people say hire fast, fire fast, very unemotional, very disconnected, and things of that nature. I think you got to be a lot more empathetic than that. We are humans after all. And yes, you are hiring somebody to do a job for you to produce a certain set of skills and tasks, whatever that may be. And I think sometimes as employers, we forget that we have an assumption of what this performance is going to look like already. And it's important as an employer, in my opinion, again, this is my opinion, that we are very clear about what we are expecting, but also when we're interviewing people, that they understand what we expect. Not just because they want to get the job, but do they understand what the tasks are that we have set in front of them to be accomplished? Can they do those? Are they familiar with those? And then do they understand the level of performance that we expect out of them? Where this is coming from is because I have, over the last few months, seen people get hired that aren't necessarily qualified for the job. So it's understood by the employer that we would be hiring somebody with the focus of training that person to a level of acceptability for the company and leadership, right? And it seems that people get hired with that understanding that they may not be exactly qualified to fill the role 100% as we see it and expect it, but that they would be a person we would like to invest in. We have accepted that we would take the time to invest in that person, to grow them and grow with them, to be able to produce at that level, at the higher level. And what happens oftentimes is, even though we have made that commitment verbally, mentally, somewhat surface level, and the employee understands that they would be expected to learn and grow into this position to achieve a certain level. One, a lot of times timelines aren't given and set so that both people are on the same page as far as how much time they have left to achieve these, or in what amount of time they need to achieve these levels of expectations. And then just a clear definition of what excellence is in that role before they start. And then most importantly, what happens is, and I just frown upon it, because it's the biggest cause of turnover, in my opinion, is we as employers commit to training someone into that role, which is great. Those are typically the best team members are the people that you train into the role. Somebody with the aptitude to do it but doesn't necessarily know, and then you train into that role. I think they mesh in better with the company and they are more ambitious to learn rather than just do the things that they've always done. And I think that's great. What ends up happening is you don't train. And if you do train, it's few and far between. You don't take the time to give them quality training one-on-one time with all the systems. Like that's a big one. People train around systems, which is crazy. You walk into these companies and they have 15, 20, 30 different systems that a team member has to get into every day. And they just train for the job, not the systems, and they just assume that that person's going to perform well. That, to me, is an oversight. It's inexperienced leadership, in my opinion. It's very immature leadership, in my opinion. And I don't mean that disrespectfully. I mean that very logically, that you are immature and inexperienced if you assume that someone will just pick up 20, 30 different platforms that they need to use every day, and that you should go ahead and train for the job as far as the technical part of it, rather than train them on the systems so that they are clear on how the technical part integrates with those systems and vice versa. And that's where we lose a lot of employees. And so we end up just becoming a turn mill, and we say things like, why can't we find good employees? And the question should be, why are we not being good leaders? So that's my message for today. If you're hiring and firing a lot of people, and again, especially if you're the overseer, or if you're the owner, the CEO, the CFO, whatever it is that's over departments, and you just keep seeing people come in and out, look at your leaders, not your employees. The biggest mistake we make, we don't look at the leaders, we look at the employees. Absolutely wrong, in my opinion. The leaders are the ones that make the choice to accept these people. So then if they accept these people, then they also accept the responsibility of the outcome of these people. And if you don't hold your leaders to that level of accountability, then you will continue to have a revolving door. You will continue to have lesser and lesser of an employee base that performs at a high level, or even seeks you out. So the high aptitude people will not seek you out if they continue to hear or see that there's high turnover. High turnover is not good, ever. That means that you're not hiring with logic. You're not hiring with a system. You're not hiring with a clear purpose on why you're hiring them, and then what the needs beyond that hiring are that are required to help that employee and lead and guide that employee to the level of aptitude that you want them to have, so that you can have a successful team. And again, there are a lot of companies that will just hire and they just want people with high aptitude, do what they do, go in and get it. So I'm not talking about those skill sets, right? Hiring and firing and those skill sets. If someone comes in, says, I meet all the metrics, you determine they meet all the metrics, they have the aptitude in your assessment, and they are telling you that they have the aptitude and the skill set and the abilities to be able to perform at the level you want them to, as long as you've explained that and you both agree that that's what you are engaging in as a relationship, that you are hiring someone to do what they have said they can do on their resume, and that's the level that you want them to be at. That's fine. That's totally different. That's not what I'm talking about. But a lot of companies, and especially in my world in the last few years, has been retail sales. They will bring in people who do not have sales experience at all and expect them to be elite salespeople without training elite sales methods. And then on top of that, they don't train them on the system. So not only are they not acclimated with the sales environment, they are not acclimated with the technology and the processes that are used within that sales environment, but they are also not acclimated in sales, the technical part at all. So there's a lot of levels there that need to be trained. And to me, first, it would be train on the systems, right? So that they understand the systems they will be using, and just let them play with the systems. Give them some time. I don't care if it's 3 days, 5 days, 10 days. I can't stress that enough. Let them get acclimated with the systems before they even engage with customers, period. And I will not waver on that. Let them engage with the systems until they are proficient enough to be able to operate on those systems. Then you talk to them about the processes that you follow when they deal with a customer. That's the second stage, right? Then you teach them the sales skills. So up until they've done the systems and the processes and they've had training on that, I would never let them talk to a customer. Period. I just wouldn't. Not because they can't talk to a customer, but because you're going to have very high expectations of how they deal with that customer, and you have not give them the minimum criteria of education to be able to handle that at a high level or elite level or a preferred level that you have. So therefore, it is a lot of leaders' faults, a lot of owners' faults, a lot of hiring managers' faults that people fail. And on top of that, it's the highest of high, it's their fault because they do not require that type of leveled, skilled training from the systems to the processes, then to the technical part of their job, so that when you are communicating them in the technical aspect, the programs and the systems and the processes do not seem to them as confusing. They cannot connect to it. So if you don't train the foundation of the tools they're going to be using and the process that they're going to utilize when they are engaging with a customer, then you are failing right off the bat. You are failing them, and you're failing your company, and you're failing yourself. So don't kid yourself. It's the platforms, the programs that you are using, so the systems you are using, that is the first thing. They need to be acclimated on all those, down to the phone, down to note takers, down to their email. They need to be proficient in those, down to the CRM and any other OEM or manufacturer site that they need to use. They need to be proficient in those before you even begin process training. And then you focus on the process, and then once they've had the process down and you've drilled it into them, then you start talking about the technical stuff, which is sales. If you do that, you will have a long-term employee who can perform at a high level. Otherwise, they will always look like they are struggling because they are, and that's your fault. So again, train your people, have clear expectations. When you hire somebody, you take their livelihood into your hands. It is 100% your responsibility to accept those people on with a clear understanding of what level they are at. And then you are also committing to get them to the level you want them to be before you start firing people. Right? Now, you also have to have a timeline. So if you have a timeline and a level that you want to get them up to, then they don't meet that, then you can start assessing whether that person is not for hire, fire, etc. But if you're doing that before that, you don't have a system, you don't have a process yourself, so you cannot expect your people to follow the same. Stay alive.